Growing up was interesting for sure. Being the youngest of five, you definitely learn to be a scavenger. From a young age, I played baseball on organized teams and just in the front yard in the street. Sports was definitely a big part of my life. Growing up in church, I knew a lot about Christianity. I knew the walk, I knew the talk. I asked my mom how to, receive Jesus, how do I be a Christian when I was 6. She just led me in the sinner's prayer, and I just accepted Jesus at that time. One of the biggest occurrences when I was young was my best friend got diagnosed with a brain tumor. This had a pretty big effect on me. He had surgery, the doctors took the tumor out and things like that, but it was cancerous, so it did grow back. He eventually passed away. That was definitely a weird time for me, kind of rocked my world for a while there. A few years later, when I was 14, I began to get these really bad headaches for 6 months straight, and they were basically every day. One night around 2 in the morning, I'm up and I went in to my room and like I did almost every night before I went to bed is, I'd open my Bible and have my own quiet time. But the weird thing was the left side of my face went numb, and when I opened my Bible to read, I couldn't understand how to read. It was the most bizarre thing, and to open a book and not be able to read, not understand at all any of the words on the page is terrifying, to say the least. Everybody's asleep in my house, and I have no clue what to do, and so I just went to bed. I'm like, you know what, I'll wake up in the morning, I'll tell my mom then. I don't want to worry about it now, I'll just go to bed. Woke up the next morning, and I opened my Bible again, and I started to read, and I could read. Everything made sense, and nothing was numb anymore. Nonetheless, I still told my mom. That day we went and saw the doctor, and they said, this stuff kind of happens when you have bad migraines, and just in case, we'll get an MRI. My sister-in-law, who was studying to be a doctor, and her dad is a doctor, we gave him the test results of the MRI. It was a Wednesday night, and my sister-in-law came to me and she said, we gotta go, I got to tell you something. I left church with her, and on the way home she told me that her dad said this was serious and it looked like a tumor, and because it was at the surface of my brain that it was probably going to need to be operated on ASAP. At that moment, life changed dramatically. The next day, I went to the doctors, and he read the MRI and said it was a tumor and that it would need to be surgically removed. Because of where it was on my brain and where they would have to be cutting around, it had the possibility of affecting speech, and maybe I wouldn't understand language anymore, and maybe I would lose feeling in my arms and legs, and I was just speechless. I remember just being there. My parents were in the room with me, and with what happened to my friend just a couple years before, how he had a brain tumor as well, and just knowing that, he didn't make it through that. Having all these things running through my head in such a short period of time, my mind was just going crazy, and anxiety just is welling up in me, and I had no clue what to do. And all I can think of is my friend a couple years before not making it through brain tumor and brain surgery and all this stuff. I went home. I just needed to be alone. I opened my Bible, and I opened to James chapter 1, and in verse 2 it talks about considering trials joy, and that the testing of your faith develops perseverance, and that you'd be complete, lacking nothing, and mature. And at that very instance, God just gave me a peace, and it was so supernatural. Whether I don't make it, whether I'm in a wheelchair, whether I can't throw a baseball anymore, whatever it was, at that point I realized, it doesn't matter, and knowing that ultimately God was going to be in control and God was going to work through it. The surgery took, I think, about 6 hours, and I woke up after surgery, and obviously I was dazed. I was sore on my head, and now I have a huge scar on my head, and my mind was working right, everything was working. Overall, I just had a great recovery, and God worked through that, and He used that to encourage a lot of people, and I'm very blessed to see Him use something like that to affect other people in my life. After going through that, life was pretty easy. I got better at sports. I hit my growth spurt. Now I'm extremely involved in church, playing in the band and going on some mission trips. I was at prom in 2008 and I met a girl named Hannah. We really started getting to know each other more when she started coming to the church youth group here at Calvary. We became very good friends, even best friends, and we both knew we liked each other, and so for about 6 months we prayed about pursuing a relationship with each other. This would be my first girlfriend, so I was very skeptical of making that leap into having a girlfriend. So I took a lot of time before I finally asked her out. As I got to know her more, I just noticed how much she's just compassionate and how much just her relationship with God is just so transparent, how she lives her life, how she doesn't gossip about people, and her character is so black and white that what was right and what was wrong, and there really wasn't any gray. It really went within that first year from just someone I have a relationship, she's my girlfriend, to this is the girl that I love and I really want to marry and I'm looking forward to a future with. We had gotten to the point where marriage was a fairly regular topic for us. The plan was to get married in about a year and a half, give or take. Even though we weren't officially engaged yet, we had already started thinking about the plans for the wedding. And life was just so exciting at this point in our lives, just knowing that in the next year and a half or so that we'd be married, and it just gave so much motivation in my life personally. Hannah's dad is the pastor of Grace Connection Church, and eventually I began getting pretty involved in the church. 3 or 4 months ago I was there at Grace Connection Church leading worship with a guest worship band, and after the service got over, me and my friend were playing ping pong in one of the other rooms, and one of the security officers who went to the church, very involved in the church, had a handgun on him, and he's licensed to carry and everything, and he had just mentioned to me as I was playing ping pong that he got a new gun, and I was interested. We had talked in the past about guns, and that's always been something I have been interested in. At that time, me and my friend both went in a closet room, and he began to show us the gun. He had been showing us some safety features of the gun and some just different aspects that the gun had, and after a little while the gun had discharged and struck through the drywall of the closet. Being in a room so small, it really just threw us back because the loud noise just really dazed us all, and at that point we realized, even though the clip was out of the gun, that there had still been a bullet in the chamber. We rushed out of the room to see if everyone was okay on the other side, and we turned, and then I saw Hannah laying on the floor. The entire room went into chaos. There's just screaming, and the ambulance got there and got Hannah, and at that point I had been in the parking lot, and my mind was just going crazy, and I also went into shock, and the second ambulance came and took me to the hospital as well. So I was hospitalized for about an hour, and that's how long it took for the shock to really wear off, and they released me from the hospital. I joined Hannah's parents to wait for her to get out of surgery. The neurosurgeon came out, and he asked Hannah's parents to come out into the hallway with him, and I heard him say the chances of survival, and he put that at 1% or less. The doctor also said that he didn't expect her to even make it through the night that day. There were already hundreds of people at the hospital for her in support. She proved the doctors wrong and made it through that first night, and that was a miracle in itself. And we had people there and that stayed the night and were praying actually every hour on the hour for her. After a couple days, she started to look better and she looked like she was recovering. During those first 3 days in the hospital, someone in the waiting room that had been praying for Hannah decided to put a prayer for Hannah group up on Facebook. Between Monday and Wednesday, a 3-day period, there had been over 5,000 people that had joined that prayer for Hannah group and were diligently praying for her. The news of Hannah and what had happened there at the church really went viral, not only on Facebook, but just through the media and news channels. And pretty quickly we learned that not only here in Pinellas County was covering the story, but all over the country and all over the world. Hannah's parents had received cards, phone calls, emails from people all over the world from 5 different continents, 150 different churches, just showing their care. And on that Wednesday, she really started to look like she was getting somewhat better, and that was definitely the high point. But on Thursday, just with all the medication going into her and all just brain swelling and all these different variables, it definitely took a turn for the worse. The swelling on her brain had gotten so severe that there was no more blood reaching her brain, and the whole family and all loved ones got to say their goodbyes and before they had removed her life support. In the hospital, one of my main prayers to God was just that whatever His will was would happen. And that is an extremely hard thing to pray, knowing that that's easily could be one of 2 things. When you have that much support, people fasting for one specific purpose, and that doesn't happen, it's pretty certain that that was His will. Just to know that ultimately we're here on this earth for His purpose and for His glory, it really puts in perspective of really the big picture, why we're here, and the things that we do and the things ultimately that we live our life for aren't people and aren't things of this world, but ultimately it's for God and His purpose. Through the pain and countless nights of being up at night and not being able to go to sleep, even though that's extremely hard and it's still tearing at me and it's still really raw, I know God has a plan, and I can see Him even working it out right now. I don't know what the big picture is yet. It's still pretty fresh, but even just today before filming this video, I was able at work to share the gospel and using this story and what happened to Hannah. So I'm already beginning to see ways that God is using it. When God allows things to happen, He allows them to happen for a reason and ultimately for His purpose. And through this, I've really understood a lot better when Paul says to live as Christ and to die as gain. I am looking forward to heaven more than ever, but while I'm here, my goal is to live as Christ. In spite of all this and even through this, no matter what happens, God is still worthy of my praise and He's still worthy of my worship, and nothing's going to stop that. Even someone as close as Hannah, which is the closest person in my life to me, even losing that wouldn't stop me from serving Jesus. My name is Dustin Bueller, and Jesus has made me a light.